Welcome back. The second video is going to look at how we can graph relationships of different variables in a graphical form like we did for ordered pairs. So when we have quantities that are being measured in the real world, we're going to relate them in a chart. Again, one of the variables, one is going to be graphed on the horizontal axis or the x-axis. We call that our independent variable. Independent variable. Whenever time's involved, this is often the independent variable. And then our second variable that's going to be graphed on our vertical axis is the dependent variable. We're typically trying to figure out how that second variable changes with respect to the first. So here we're looking at how the volume of IV fluid changes over time. Okay, excellent. So the first thing we have to realize is that these two pieces of column data can really be thought of as ordered pairs. So the first bit of data tells us when x is 0, y is 1,000. So I'm going to want to be plotting the point 0, 1,000. Similarly, the next point that I'm going to have to graph is the point 15, 975. After 15 minutes, there's 975 milliliters of IV fluid left. After 30 minutes, there's 950 milliliters of IV fluid left. That corresponds to the ordered pair 30, 950. And then finally, after 45 minutes, there's 925 milliliters of IV fluid left, corresponding to the ordered pair of 45, 925. So I now have a sense of the scale that I need to draw. I know what my maximum values are for both my horizontal x-axis and my vertical axis, my y-axis. Now, because I only have positive values, I'm not going to have my axes centered in the middle of my graphing plot. Instead, I really am only interested in quadrant 1, the positive quadrant, so I don't have to think about labeling my negative axes that much, okay? So one thing when we're doing an application question that when we're labeling, we're going to be labeling our axis not just with the variable, but we're also going to be labeling it with what it represents underneath. So my x-axis is time, and the units it's measured in is minutes. I'm going to want to label that below the axis. And then my y-axis is the volume of IV fluid, and that's in milliliters. And typically we do rotate the text up the y-axis, okay, so we can put more details in there. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to label our axes. We typically want to use friendly numbers, so I've got to figure out how am I going to label my x-axis. I've got to get up to a maximum value of 45, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 squares to do that in. So if I do 45 divided by 12, I'm going to get a decimal number come out. It's going to be 3 and change. So maybe I like counting by friendly numbers, so I'm going to count by 5. So I'm going to label my x-axis 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. I don't want to label it just with 15, 30, and 45 because I want to make sure that I use as much of the x-axis as I can to make my graph as large as possible. Okay, now that our x-axis is labeled, we can try and figure out how we should label the y-axis. So for the y-axis, I need to get up to 1,000, and I've got how many squares to get there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if I want to get all the way to the top, I suppose. So I could go up by 100. Okay, awesome. So we'll start labeling that 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on. Okay, now that I've got my grid all organized, then I'm going to label my points. I've got 0, 1,000. Oh, I'll do it in red so it stands out. Excellent. 15, 975. Okay, 39.50, and then 45,925. Excellent. The next thing I have to do is connect those points with a line. If you have a ruler handy, that's great. And I'm going to try and find a line tool in this graphing software. Okay, there we have it. And if we've done a good job, all of our points should be right in the middle of where of that line that we've drawn. Okay. So the nice thing about graphing and then putting a straight line through is we can then estimate the volume at different times when we might not have actually collected data. And so if we wanted to make a prediction about when the volume would be at 900 milliliters, we could do that. It would be at about 60 minutes time. Okay, great job. So in this case, we were given a table of values that was pre-populated for us. The next video will look at generating a table of values from a formula.